Please be seated. We pray with me. Be still and know that God is here. Be still and know that God is here. Be still and know that God is here. Amen.
Amen.
Welcome to the second Sunday of Advent. Last Sunday we lit the first candle on our Advent wreath, the candle of hope. In her sermon, Cindy explained the difference between the secular definition of hope, which is more or less to wish for something, and the biblical definition, which is the confident expectation of what God has promised. The secular meaning of hope puts the emphasis on human desire, where the biblical meaning places its foundation on trust in God and his promises. On the second Sunday of Advent, we light the candle of peace on our Advent wreath, and we celebrate the prophets. Prophets are those peculiar individuals who deliver messages from God to God's people. These messages are typically a calling of God's wandering people back to God. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Anna, Ezekiel, Daniel, Elijah, Deborah, and John the Baptist are just a few of the prophets mentioned in the Bible. While some of them have their own books included in the Bible, most are simply mentioned within other books. Our first reading today is from the book of Baruch, which is one of those deuterocanonical books known as the Apocrypha. Baruch ben Neriah was the scribe, disciple, secretary, and devoted friend of the prophet Jeremiah, and he's the presumed author of this particular book. Baruch writes, "For God has ordered that every high mountain and the everlasting hills be made low, and the valleys filled up to make level ground." This reading is really very similar to the quote from the prophet Isaiah that's found in our gospel lesson from Luke. "Prepare the way of the Lord, make his paths straight. Every valley shall be filled, and every mountain and hill shall be made low, and the crooked shall be made straight, and the rough ways made smooth." We read this scripture from Isaiah every year during Advent. And until a few days ago, the image in my head was still that childhood image of God's mighty hand leveling all the mountains and then using that dirt to kind of fill up all of the valleys to make everything level, kind of like a child in a sandbox. It was a very literal leveling of the earth. But when I read the scripture alongside the other lessons this week, and then I thought about the candle of peace, the message of the prophets reached me in a new way. Not actual mountains and valleys, but societal mountains and valleys. The rich and the poor, and the powerful and the lowly, and the full and the hungry. Both Baruch and Isaiah are delivering messages of God's desire for a leveling, not of the surface of the earth, but of the society of earth's people. A leveling so that Israel may walk safely in the glory of God, and all flesh shall see the salvation of God. But who is doing the leveling? Canticle 16 is Zechariah's prayer for his son John. "You, my child, shall be called the prophet of the Most High, for you will go before the Lord to prepare his way, to give his people knowledge of salvation by the forgiveness of their sins." These words from Zechariah are a prayer for his son John the Baptist, who was to prepare the way for Jesus, the Prince of Peace. These words are also a prayer for all of us who continue to prepare the way for Jesus, to enter our hearts daily and to come to us again in the future. We are, each one of us in our own way, messengers of God, called to share the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ with the rest of the world. You, my child, will go before the Lord to prepare his way, to give people knowledge of salvation by the forgiveness of their sins. You, my child, will let the compassion of our God shine on those who dwell in darkness and the shadow of death. You, my child, will guide our feet into the way of peace. As Cindy said last week, we have hope and expectation that God's promises will be fulfilled, that God's righteous peace will reign, and we are to be the messengers, like the prophets, helping to spread that hope of peace. We are to proclaim God's message of love, forgiveness, compassion, grace, and truth. We are to speak God's truth to the powerful and the rich. We are to fill the hungry and lift the lowly. We are to comfort the afflicted and care for the poor. The definition of the word peace is a state of mutual harmony between people or groups, especially in personal relationships. In 1955, Jill Jackson and her husband, Cy Miller, wrote a song for a retreat of young people who were from a wide variety of religious, ethnic, and socioeconomic backgrounds. The young people had come together for a week-long experience devoted to developing friendships and understanding through education, discussion, and working together. The song's focus on peace and God made it easy to cross the many boundaries that existed between these young people. When they came home from the retreat, the youth brought the song with them and started sharing it in their homes and their churches. And then the song began an amazing journey around the globe. The song was shared in all 50 states, at school graduations, at PTA meetings and holiday gatherings. Kiwanis clubs sang it, as well as United Auto Workers and the American Legion. The song was taped, copied, printed in songbooks, and passed by word of mouth. It was recorded by Tennessee Ernie Ford, Pat Boone, Mahalia Jackson, Johnny Mathis, Placido Domingo, and very recently by Vince Gill. Eventually, it spread overseas and was sung by Maoris in New Zealand and Zulus in Africa. The song is Let There Be Peace on Earth, and we're going to sing it in just a few minutes for our offertory. The amazing story of the spread of this short, simple summer camp song demonstrates the deep hunger of the world's people for God's righteous peace. If two people can unite the world with a song, imagine what could happen if all God's children worked together to spread God's message of peace. If all God's children work together to fill the valleys and make the mountains low. As we heard in our reading from the letter to the Philippians, I am confident of this, that the one who began a good work among you will bring it to completion by the day of Jesus Christ. And this is my prayer, that your love may overflow more and more with knowledge and full insight to help you to determine what is best, so that in the day of Christ you may be pure and blameless, having produced the harvest of righteousness that comes through Jesus Christ for the glory and praise of God. May it be so. Amen.